How's it going? I'm Ryan Dent, the youth minister here. Prayer has affected my life. Um, my mom had 3 children before me. My sister was a preemie, and then she had a miscarriage, and then my brother Robbie was born. My brother Robbie was born as a preemie with a hole in his heart back in the 80s, and they had no way of fixing that hole. He passed away when he was 2, and then my mother decided that she couldn't have kids anymore. She had to try to stop having another kid. But they really wanted her and my dad another baby boy. And so they prayed about it, and they kept praying, and they kept looking at adoption agencies and scenarios. Fast forward 2 years. 2 years later, I was born in a hospital, Riverside Hospital, Newport News, Virginia. I was born to a young woman, and the nurse or one of the doctor's associates that was working there, she lived down the street from us. She actually called my mom, and through some loops and hurdles, instead of going through an adoption agency, I was adopted there the week I was born. Because of that scenario, the nurse who worked through the situation, she actually lost her job and ended up getting another job at another hospital for a better salary. But she jumped through hoops and hurdles to make sure that I was adopted. A year ago, my mother, she bought me this book about a year after my ordination, and the book is called My Love Will Find You Wherever You Go. I truly believe that through her prayers when I was adopted, and the years leading up to then after Robbie had passed away, she was praying that her love would find a child that she could call her son. And God saw through that to put me into a situation where I can be loved by 2 Christian parents. And because of that, I was adopted into a mom who was a lifetime Sunday school teacher and a dad who was an elder at the church. And now I'm here today as a youth minister at First Christian Church. And I truly believe that God, through prayer, acts upon love, and it will find you wherever you go.
Good morning. I'm just going to do a brief testimony of how God has answered prayers in my life recently. He has been answering prayers my whole 60-something years, but most recently I had a place to come up on my back, and several people looked at it and they said, you need to go see about this. So I went to a dermatologist in Rocky Mount with what I thought was just the one place. And during the exam, there was another place that she was even more concerned about. And she told me that day, it's melanoma. She said, I know that's what it is. She said, I can look at it and tell. So just for, to go back a little bit, many years ago, I was in my late 20s, early 30s. A very dear friend of mine's father was diagnosed with melanoma. He was going in for a routine back surgery, and they found a spot on his back, and he lived about 6 weeks after he was diagnosed. So it has been a real fear of mine for many years that one day I would get melanoma. It didn't stop me from laying in the sun, and it didn't make me put number 92 sunscreen on, but it was a very real fear that I had. So anyway, back to this day, I heard those words, I'm pretty sure you have melanoma. So she did the biopsies, and as soon as I left the doctor's office, I called Dennis, of course, and through tears I told him what she had said. And he says, well, we're just not going to, that's just not the way this is going to be. We're going to pray this, we're going to pray about this, and this is not how it's going to be. So we weren't sure whether we wanted to tell people or whether we wanted to wait till the biopsy came back. And we decided we were going to tell everybody. So everybody would be praying. We had it put out, of course, to our church, to my mom's church, to our kids, to everyone that we knew, because we wanted to have just prayers about this, because we didn't want this to be melanoma. And one of our friends, Frank Graybill, looked at a picture of it. He told Dennis, he said, it's melanoma. if I've ever seen melanoma, it's melanoma. So about 10 days later, we went back. The two of us went together for the results of what the biopsy showed. And she walked in the room and she looked at both of us and she said, "Can't explain this, but neither one of these places is melanoma." She said, "It's squamous cell." She said, "That's not the best thing to have, but it's not melanoma." And Dennis and I just looked at each other and smiled. And later on, during the visit, we told her why it was not melanoma, why it was squamous cell. So that's just a very brief but very important time that prayers were answered in my life, because I had to face that fear. And it's not easy to face a fear like that. But for 10 days, I had to face that fear, and I prayed about it and had other people praying for me and with me. And he did answer that prayer. And I thank all of you for your prayers also. Thank you.
First of all, when it comes to talking about prayer, I just want to let you know that I don't pray nearly as much as I should. But I have had 2 or 3 that were prayed for a long time, and I had friends praying with me. When Barry stopped drinking 25 years ago, I'd been praying for years, along with a group of other ladies from the church I was in at that time. And in fact, 2 of those ladies are in our church now. And, I had to search myself before I could pray the prayer that I thought God wanted me to pray, because it wasn't just going to affect maybe my life in the way things were with my girls, but I had to realize that Barry needed a new change in his life, and that only God was going to take care of that. So one day in church, the preacher opened his sermon with "Let go and let God." Unbeknown to me at that time that was one of the AA's slogans that was often used. And God, it was like he was just sitting on my shoulder, and he spoke to me and said, "I will take care of this." And so about 3 months later was when Barry realized that he'd had a drinking problem and things had to change. And so over the course of a year or so, we both attended. He attended AA meetings, I attended Al-Anon meetings, and just both of us getting more involved in church and acknowledging that God had indeed answered prayers. And of course, needless to say, that was just a turning point in our relationship as a married couple and as parents to our children, and just relating to others in a Christian way. Another way that, another prayer that has been answered is that a wayward child that you want to come back home, that you feel like that's the best thing for them is to be close to family and friends. And when that child calls you up on the phone and says, "I'm ready to come home, I know I need to be home," that is an answered prayer that is just, it's beyond words. I mean, I struggled for several weeks and months trying to know how to pray for this child. And, finally God revealed to me that he loved her more than I did, and that he was going to indeed take care of her. And he did. And so that's just a couple of examples that the prayers that's been answered for us. Of course, there's been, sicknesses and just, prayers that you have to pray for about, a new vehicle, or what to do about something that needs to be fixed around the house. Just discernment, and so much that goes on in our everyday lives. So go to the Lord in prayer with the little things as well as the big things. But just have faith, knowing that in his time, he will take care of them.
More than I ever have before or since. June 13th, the year 2000, my husband, Kenny, whom most of you probably know, received a near electrocution of over 7,000 volts. I was in a teacher workshop and had gone to lunch and didn't drive my own car when I got a phone call from Bun Landon. That in itself was remarkable, telling me that, Kenny'd had a little accident, but he was going to be okay, and for me to meet him at the hospital. Right then, you start praying. And I had no idea what was going on. All I knew is there was a little accident. I called my son, who was on summer vacation. He set the land speed record, I guess, getting to the Mexican restaurant to take me to the hospital. And as it was, we beat the ambulance. So we were both standing there when Kenny was brought in. And the whole time we're standing, when I'm waiting for my son to get to me, while we're driving down 10th Street, to pray without ceasing, that's what we were both doing. And as we came to know, God's blessings were good compared to the injuries that he could have sustained in this. What really happened was, in fact, terrible, but it certainly wasn't as awful as it could have been. When we got to the burn center at UNC after his historic helicopter ride, we met people there. Another guy who had about the same situation without both arms. We met another man who worked in the electrical situation who was practically blind with cataracts at the age of 26 from it. So we knew that we had been tremendously blessed. Over the years since his accident, we have dealt with many different situations, and other than prayer, I don't know how we would have gotten through them. I mean, we had problems with PTSD. I can't remember how many surgeries, and when you're sitting there alone in a waiting room at a big hospital, you pray. You keep praying, and you pray until that doctor comes out, and then you pray some more. To look at him today, he looks very well considering all that he has been through, and I count that one of the greatest blessings from the Lord. I've been praying for him nonstop. My children were at the cusp of a lot of things in their life. My daughter had just finished middle school. My son was finishing his junior year of high school. So, there's no such thing as a good time to have a traumatic event. But they have required extra prayer because of that. I've often wondered, just how different our lives would have been without this instance in our life. And there have been so many blessings that have come from it that we try to look for the silver lining all the time. He's here, he's with us, he has all of his extremities, and most of the time he has his right mind. Not all the time, but most of the time. But we are truly thankful to God that he is still on this earth with us, and as we've said many times since that day, God was definitely not finished with him yet.
On June 2nd, 2013, was a time when my dad was at MCV, and he was getting ready to go through his second open heart surgery in the matter of 2 months. And my husband, Tony, and I had gone over, it was a Sunday night, to wash his hair and cut his hair and shave his beard for the upcoming surgery on that Tuesday. And when we finished, my dad looked at us and he told me, "Don't let them cut my feet off." And when you have an older person in the hospital, the first thing you think is, okay, is the medicine is working on him tonight. And so you just say, okay, Dad, I won't let them cut your feet off. And you don't let them think, they're crazy or have lost their mind. That's perfectly normal. And we'll deal with that. And on that was Sunday night. On Tuesday morning was his surgery. And they let us go back into the staging area. And we all talked to him and told him what we wanted him to know and kind of joked around with him. We had him smiling and laughing, and I was the last one to leave him. And his expression changed, and he caught my eyes with his eyes, and he said, don't let them cut my feet off, and I love you. So I said, okay, Dad, I'm not going to let them cut your feet off, and I love you too. And I'll see you in a little while. From Tuesday night when he came out of surgery, things never got better. They only got worse. Going up into the following Monday, and that Monday, we were faced with a decision. We noticed, and the doctors and the nurses pointed out to us, his circulation was being cut off and to extremities. Mm-hmm. The tips of his fingers were turning black, and his feet were turning black. And I asked a lot of questions about that, and his main doctor told me, she said, that's okay. I still need a couple of days. I can do this. You can live without your feet. But give me 2 more days. And we went home that night, and I just, I had been praying, Lord, save my dad. I want my dad. Make him well. And the prayers that night were the same. And during the night, it hit me. My dad was telling me what our family had to do the next morning. And we went in and met with the doctor, and she said, okay, what are we going to do? And we had decided it's time to let my dad go. He had suffered enough. And the doctor couldn't understand. And finally I told her, I said, my dad told me a week ago, and he also told me the day, a couple of days before the surgery, not to let you cut his feet off. And that's what you're going to do at this point to save him. And then you can't promise me you're going to save my dad. I said, that's the answer to my prayer, was struggling with having to make that decision to let my dad go. And because of that answered prayer, my dad is well. My dad has a new body. He's very aware of what's going on. And with just that prayer not being answered the way I wanted to be answered, but it was answered the way God was going to heal my dad. And I praise God for him doing that. And my dad, I loved him so much, and to let him go was one of the hardest things I had to do. But it's what he wanted.
Prayer changed my life, without a doubt. 2002, I had prostate cancer. It was amazing of the support of my church family at that particular time. And as we went through that process, I was in and out of the hospital a couple of times, had issues. And I remember I kept praying, Lord, what in the world have I not done that I need to do? I had a sense that there was something that I needed to do at the hospital that I hadn't done. I just kept praying, Lord, use me, bring it to my attention. And then one night, Sherry and I were walking down the hall, and it was as if a magnet had pulled me into this person's room. And so I went in, and we started talking. And as it turned out, the lady had been praying that God would send someone, because her husband was a non-believer and he was not doing well. He had been in a car wreck. They both had been in a car wreck on the interstate. And she was recovering, and he wasn't doing so well. And I think that was probably one of the answered prayers, because once that conversation was held, I went home the next day. It was kind of interesting. But when you hear your name in cancer, you always, I guess the first thing we ask is, well, why me? And I had that pity party for a little bit. But with all of the press support and all of the church family and friends that I had around me, I couldn't stay in that mindset. And it changed pretty quickly to, well, why not me? Those of you that know me, I don't mind talking, so I'm not afraid to talk to people. And I just ask God to use me, especially with men that have getting ready to go through what I have been through. And I tell people all the time, be careful what you pray for, because the Lord will answer them. And when he answers those prayers, you've got to be pretty close to ready to move, because he will put a fire under your feet and he will bring you to task on what you've asked for. So prayer has definitely changed my life in many ways, more ways than I can remember. I wouldn't be sitting here today had it not been for prayer, and I'm grateful.
God has answered many prayers in my life. I'm very blessed. When Douglas was really sick and we spent time in the hospital, especially the last week of his life, it seemed that sometimes when I was there by myself, I would pray, Lord, I need this or I need that. And I would look up and there would be somebody from church or one of my church family members right there by my side with exactly what I needed, whether it be a hug, whatever. And God supplied my needs through prayer. I prayed for the Lord to make Douglas whole. I was hoping that it would be here on earth, but I knew God had a bigger plan, and he did make him whole, and he ended up with a new body. And he did answer my prayers. And I know that one day I'll see him again. God has supplied and answered my prayers since then. He's provided a lot of people in my life to meet needs for me here on earth that have been just from coming to my home, helping me with various things, being there for me through all kinds of ways. And just so many that I don't even know that I can name them all. I'm just very blessed, and I just wanted to take this time to just say that God is good to me. He's given me a sweet granddaughter that is just little Sadie, that I can't even begin to tell you how I know that's a blessing from God. He's given me friends, family, my church family, and I know God is so good, and he's there for me, and he does answer prayers, and I don't know what I would do without prayer. Prayer is so strong in my life, and such a blessing to me. And I do believe in the power of prayer and what it can do for you.